Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan vowed on Friday to expand Ankara's operation in a Kurdish enclave in northern Syria eastward, toward the frontier with Iraq. His comments, during an address to local leaders of his ruling party in Ankara, appeared to be in defiance of the United States, which has urged Turkey to keep its campaign in Syria limited in scope and duration and to focus on ending the war. Erdogan said the Turkish forces' push into Afrin would stretch further east, to the Syrian Kurdish town of Manbij, and toward the border with Iraq until no terrorist is left. Turkey considers the Syrian Kurdish forces, known as the People's Protection Units or YPG, as a terrorist group because of their purported links to Kurdish insurgents within Turkey's own border. Manbij is held by the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is dominated by the YPG. U.S. troops are not present in Afrin but are embedded with the SDF in other parts of Syria, where they are working to prevent a resurgence of the Islamic State group. We will clear Manbij of terrorists. No one should be disturbed by this because the real owners of Manbij are not these terrorists, they are our Arab brothers, Erdogan said. From Manbij, we will continue our struggle up to the border with Iraq, until no terrorist is left. Ankara's push into Manbij would put Turkish troops in proximity to American soldiers there. Erdogan remarks came on the seventh day of the Turkish incursion into Afrin, which started last Saturday. Meanwhile, Turkey's Health Minister Ahmet Demirkan said Friday the operation into Afrin had led to 14 deaths on the Turkish side. 3 Turkish soldiers and 11 Syrian opposition fighters allied with them were killed in fighting since January 20, he said. Some 130 others were wounded. The SDF said the first week of Turkey's incursion had left more than 100 civilians and fighters dead. The group said in a statement Friday that among the dead are 59 civilians and 43 fighters, including 8 women fighters. At least 134 civilians were wounded in the week-long clashes, it added. Turkey's military said at least 343 terrorists have been neutralized during the campaign, a figure the Syrian Kurdish dispute. In his speech, Erdogan slammed the U.S. alliance with the Kurdish forces in Manbij and other parts of Syria. Our greatest sadness is to see these terrorist organizations run wild holding U.S. flags in this region, Erdogan said. Erdogan said President Donald Trump asked him not to criticize us so much during their telephone call on Wednesday. Okay, said Erdogan, quoting what he allegedly told Trump in the conversation. But how can a strategic partner do such a thing to its strategic partner? Erdogan also accused the Syrian Kurdish militia of using civilians as human shields in Afrin to try and slow down the advance of the Turkish forces and of the Turkish-backed Syrian opposition fighters. He also criticized calls by U.S. and other allies for a quick resolution of Turkey's incursion, saying military interventions in places in Afghanistan and Iraq lasted for several years. Late Thursday, the Pentagon described Turkey's military operations in Afrin as not helpful and threatening to damage the ongoing fight against Islamic State militants in Syria. Joint Staff Director Lieutenant General Kenneth F. McKenzie Jr. said U.S. military commanders continued to talk with Turkey about the establishment of some type of safe zone along the Turkey-Syria border. He said it was simply an idea floating around right now and there has been no decision yet. McKenzie said the U.S. is clearly tracking movement by Turkey but downplayed the chances of American forces being threatened in the vicinity of the town of Manbij.